Okay, I think we are ready to start. Please, I will ask everyone to mute themselves so that it will not interfere with our talk. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Nigina.
Okay, perfect. I'm just gonna talk introduction a little bit in Uzbek. Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli kuzatuvchilar. Bugungi kiberxavfsizlik sohasida qanday qilib muvaffaqiyatlarga erishish mumkin deb nomlangan webinarimizga xush kelibsiz. Webinarimiz ko'proq bu safargi esa suhbat tarzida bo'lib o'tadi. Bugungi mehmonimiz Mr.Leroy Terrelonge. Mr.Leroy allaqachon biz kanalimizga biografiyasini yubordik. Shu kiberxavfsizlik sohasida katta muvaffaqiyatlarga erishgan insonlardan biri hisoblanadi. Bugungi suhbatimiz ko'proq ingliz tilida bo'lib o'tadi. Lekin agar ingliz tilini bilmaganlar bu yerga qo'shilgan bo'lsa, biz suhbatimiz oxiridan keyin asosiy aytib o'tilgan mavzularni o'zbek tilida olib yozib yuborishga harakat qilamiz. Good evening, good morning for everyone. Thanks for joining us to our talk today. Please, everyone, I will ask you to mute yourself so that it will not interfere with our talk. Otherwise, I have to go through each and every one to mute, and that's a lot of work for me. Welcome to our talk today about the secrets of being successful in cybersecurity industry. We have a guest speaker today, guest speaker Mr. Please, who is not muting themselves? I'm sorry for disruptions. That's one of the things that we struggle when we have Zoom meetings. Today we have a guest talker, guest speaker, Mr.Leroy Terrelonge. Correct me if I'm not saying your name correctly.
Terrelonge.
Hello. Am I saying your name correctly?
It's Terrelonge.
Terrelonge. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for correcting me. Mr. Terrelonge is an assistant vice president in MIS Cyber Risk Group, where he works collaboratively with analysts across MIS lines of business to publish timely and relevant research on cyber risk and its impact on financial performances. I met Mr. Terrelonge in one of my virtual internships with IQ4. He was one of my supervisors. I learned a lot from you, and I really thought our students will benefit from your insights on future of cybersecurity and what takes everyone to be expert in the field. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Nigina, and thank you for those kind words. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. So just a disclaimer, this is being recorded. Is this okay with you? Because we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel as well.
That's great.
Thank you. Internet is still a little bit of a problem in Uzbekistan, so a lot of our participants would like to watch YouTube videos rather than being online because it can get a little bit sketchy sometimes. Are you, tell me, I'm not sure, are you still working with IQ4? Are you still with the team?
I am. We have a class starting a week from today.
Nice.
At cyber criminals and following cybercrime online.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just saw that someone shared it in LinkedIn. One of the junior interns.
Yeah. So
awesome.
IQ4 is still going strong, and since it's online, it can still operate almost as normal, even when we're still dealing with the coronavirus here in the United States.
That's awesome. I think a lot of our students will be benefited from that as well. We can share information and what's going to be during our talk today. Today, we will be joined with Dostonbek Toyerov and Yusufbek Nasruddinov. They are our mentors in International Education Joint Initiative Network. We just recently changed our names because we are taking next steps to become official NGO of this platform. It's exciting. Would you like to say hi, Yusufbek and Dostonbek?
Hi, Dostonbek. Hi, Yusufbek.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Nigina, for the introduction. Well, I also go by Doston, so you can just call me Doston. And thank you, Dr. Leroy, for joining us today. It's such an honor to have you here, and then to learn from you, from your experiences. And we are very much excited to listen to what you have to say.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi, Leroy. Thank you very much for your time, for making such a good webinar. Thank you.
Absolutely.
One second, I'm just gonna make Yusufbek host so that he can control some of the technical stuff. I'm still confused with the Zoom settings. It takes time for transitioning periods.
Yes.
Before the pandemic, I never even knew about the Zoom. So a lot of changes in our lives. So tell us, like, how is the transitioning going on? Are you working remotely right now?
That's correct. My workplace, Moody's, it's a financial services company in New York City. And most of the work that we do, we can do remotely. So very early on, for us in the pandemic, which was around mid-February, they recommended people who work from home. And so I've been working from home now for about 3.5 months. And it's been a very interesting experience, and had to make some changes at home to make it comfortable to work here. But you know, I'm very happy that and very grateful that I have the ability to work from home. A lot of people don't have that ability.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's one of the beauty of cyber industry. It can pretty transition to any kind of situation, and that's that industry that has a lot of future on it. A lot of our participants were interested in your own story. How did you like end up with like this cybersecurity job? Where did you start? If you don't mind sharing some of your stories.
Sure. One of the things that I find very interesting about cybersecurity is that there's no one way to get into the cybersecurity industry. So for some other professions that might be a little bit more established, they've been around for a very long time, like medicine, for example. If you want to be a doctor, you can't just show up and say, hi, I want to be a doctor. You have to go to medical school for a certain number of years. You have to have this sort of practice, internships experience. You have to be sort of supervised by people for quite a long time before you're able to do it. With cybersecurity, people come in from many different backgrounds. My personal background is that I worked for the US National Security Agency as a language analyst. And I helped in translation from Persian, which is what they speak in Iran, to English. And I did that for a number of years. And then I wanted to see more of the world. And I wanted to do consulting for companies that wanted to invest in Central Asia. So I went to Kazakhstan for a year, and I taught English at a university in Kazakhstan called Kimet University. And when I did that for a year, then I came back to the master's program and thought that I was going to do business and again help companies investing in that part of the world, or if companies in Central Asia wanted to come to the US, help them to do that. But it didn't work out that way. And instead, I ended up being hired by a cybersecurity company. And I didn't really have any background with cybersecurity. I didn't, I could use a computer. I could type, I could write, I could send emails and things like that, very simple things. But I didn't know anything about how computers worked or, any of the more technical parts of cybersecurity. And so I asked them, why do you want to hire me? And for me, it was a combination of understanding a number of different languages, because not all cyber criminals speak English, and also having a background in writing intelligence analysis and working for national security, and understanding how to write about a report about what's happening, so that people could understand how to protect themselves. And so that's how I got into it, and that was 2015. So about 5 years ago, almost to the day. And it's just a really great industry for learning, for taking people from many different backgrounds and allowing people to use the experience they've had to help them do their job.
That's awesome. Wow, that's a lot of accomplishments in a short amount of time.
Yeah, well, the cyber world is a very fast-moving world. So even only having worked in cybersecurity for 5 years, things move so quickly. There's always something new and interesting to discover. And that's one of the very cool things about cybersecurity too, is that you'll never be bored. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to do. You can always improve in some way. And there's no reason to to get stuck in one place or be uninterested.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, you are the one of the reason that I started my interest in cyber. When I started the virtual internship, I had no idea if I wanted to go into cyber or not. I was political science major. And there is a misconception about how people avoid going into STEM related majors or even cyber just because they think they don't like math and physics, and they think that that's one of the important things that they need to study in order to be cyber. Could you tell us some about it? Because I know that you offered like some of the great insights during the internship, and I would love other students to hear that as well.
Sure. So I would say cybersecurity is a very large field. I think when we say cybersecurity, people think it's one specific thing, but it's not. It's kind of like if you say the medical field, you can be a doctor, a nurse, you can be, you can work on hearts, you can work on brains, you can work on, livers. There's different specialties that you can have in medicine. The same thing in cybersecurity. So there's no one profile of somebody who is going to work in cybersecurity, and everybody will find something that's different and interesting that they can work on. So I didn't have a math background, a physics background. I took those things in high school because I had to. And when I was done with high school, I said, that's it, I'm never taking a math class again. When I got to college, I didn't take any math classes. I had to take we called it quantitative reasoning class. And so it was supposed to be math-like, but it was primarily a class about, computer systems, but there was like no math whatsoever. And so I was very happy.
Yeah.
So, I also thought that I wasn't the right person for cybersecurity because I thought, I don't know any Black people in cybersecurity. I'm not a great mathematician. I'm not, I didn't study lots of science. So I just thought it wasn't something that I could do. And I think really the only thing you need to be successful in cybersecurity is curiosity, because a lot of cybersecurity learning you have to do on your own. You have to be willing to set things up and see how they work and take them apart. And you have to do a lot of reading of what we call them, protocols and things like that that help you understand how they work. And so really the most important trait is that sense of curiosity and wanting to learn, wanting to try new things. And basically, I think the only potential disqualifier for cybersecurity is if you don't like computers. If you don't like computers, then probably working in cybersecurity is not the best place to be. But other than that, there's so much you can do, and all you really need is to want to do it, be interested.
Yeah, I really like one of the points that you made, that cybersecurity industry really need representation and inclusivity. We do really need women and minorities working in the cyber. I'm actually wearing one of my t-shirts that says "Women Pass to AI" because the whole point of this platform that we created was some of the students around the world also making the education accessible, making the information accessible to everyone, so that future of education, future of this industries will be more inclusive. I know that Yusuf Bek is also not IT related major, but he's also like very passionate about cyber. Would you like to add some of your opinions on that, Yusuf Bek?
Well, actually, I also studied the business, but it's really interesting to know about how the hackers like white hat or black hat hackers make their own stuff or use the exploits. It's really interesting. In order to have your in order to be an expert, I think that you just at least have to be interested in that. You don't really need to have a major on this field, but you must love it.
That is very true, because it's a lot of practice.
I wanted just to touch on what you just said about representation. I wanted to share quickly something I saw from the head of Dragos. Dragos is a cybersecurity company that focuses on industrial cybersecurity, so manufacturing, power generation, those types of organizations. And he said something yesterday that I thought was really interesting about hiring diverse people. Mm-hmm. And he said, hiring diverse people is not something that we do because we think it's, a good idea, or because we want to we want to just we're not doing it just because we like, mm-hmm. Or it's really because we need people who think differently from each other. If everybody looks the same, if everybody thinks the same, they're not thinking how the criminals are thinking. The cyber criminals are all different types of people. They all are acting differently, and you really need people who are have many different ways of looking at a problem to help you to solve that and to stop bad things from happening. So diversity is not just nice words, it's what you actually need to be effective.
Definitely. I think one of the main thing in cybersecurity is the critical thinking, and to know that to look at the problems in a different ways, and the diversity definitely plays a big role on this. That's why I was very shocked, I would say shocked, that I could also be in cybersecurity, even though I'm in political science major, even though I don't have any IT background. I did start my minor in computer science, so I'm taking computer science classes now. There's no question about you have to be good at computer and you must love to be on the computer to work on cybersecurity. But there's really, I would like to get rid of this misconception of you can be computer science hacker or cybersecurity to work in cybersecurity if you were majoring in computer science only. So thank you for giving your insights about that. So you told us that you work in Kazakhstan. Have you been in Uzbekistan?
Yes, I was there in 2012.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I went for Nowruz, and we started in Khiva. We started in Tashkent. We flew to Khiva. We went also to Samarkand and Bukhara, and it was very beautiful. I had a wonderful time.
That's awesome. I'm from Samarkand, and we have diverse people from almost all regions of Uzbekistan. Actually, that's really awesome. How long did you stay there? How many days?
About 10 days.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think that's the reasonable time to really get the whole experience in Uzbekistan.
Yeah, and my favorite souvenir that I took back is I don't know, in Russian I think you call it chayny service, but it's like this big bowl with the pialas and the
It's the teapot set.
Yes, exactly.
Like
it's very beautiful. Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome. If you guys have any questions to Mr. Leroy, you guys can just jump in and ask those. I think our participants will be asking some questions as well. And you, if I'm not mistaken, you also speak Russian.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's very cool. So did you learn Russian in Kazakhstan, or did you learn it before? Like, did you know Russian before going to Kazakhstan?
I studied Russian in my first year of university.
Mm-hmm.
I took a very intensive Russian class. We met about 9 hours a week, which,
wow,
you know, for
that is
university
intense.
classes, a lot. Yeah. And then the other 3 years, I didn't take any Russian, so I forgot a lot of what I learned. And then 4 years after I graduated, so probably about 8 years between when I studied and when I went to Kazakhstan. So when I got to Kazakhstan, I had very limited Russian. I could speak about very simple things. So it was hard to do things like get my internet set up or ask for a plumber to come fix the pipe in the kitchen when it was broken. But it was a really good experience to be able to live there and have to use Russian every day. And also I took Kazakh lessons when I was there as well. Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Kazakh language is very close to Uzbek. So if you speak some Kazakh, maybe you can speak some Uzbek as well.
I understood about 70% of what you said at the beginning.
Oh, that's really awesome. Yeah. Wow. So like you're very fast learner. No wonder that you accomplished so much in 5 years in cybersecurity. So like we have some questions and I'll be reading them. One of our participants is asking, does cybersecurity require a lot of coding? So what's the day-to-day like working like for you?
So I'll tackle the first question about coding first. Mm-hmm. And I'll go back to what I said about there being many different types of cybersecurity jobs. So I, for example, used to work at a company called Flashpoint where we looked at cyber criminals online. And that was a way of understanding how do cyber criminals do what they do? You know, what types of techniques do they use? Who do they talk about attacking? And so for that job, there was no coding necessary. All you needed to do was know how to read and be able to read foreign language, because a lot of times they'd be discussing maybe in Russian or maybe in Persian or French or Spanish. But there was no coding knowledge necessary for the job that I did there. Other people might work in something called malware reversing, where you take the programs that people use to steal information or to destroy a computer or something like that. They take that and they have to figure out what it does. And so they have to use different tools, different techniques. And for that, you have to have a pretty good understanding of how programming works, how coding works. And so that's really important. Other people might work on fraud. So a lot of people will use, will commit cybercrime by trying to steal things from companies, they might steal credit card numbers, and they might use that to buy things with other people's financial information. That's also cybercrime, but you don't need to know anything about coding or programming, really. So it really depends on the type of job that you want to do. And I encourage anybody who's interested in cybersecurity to talk to lots of different people about what they do on a day-to-day basis, because everybody's job is different. and you might like certain aspects of cybersecurity and not really care about others. And that talking to lots of people or reading online the different types of jobs that exist is really helpful in helping you determine what path might be the right for you, what might be most interesting, and what you might feel most comfortable being involved in. And the second part of the question, what I do on a day-to-day basis. So again, I used to work tracking cyber criminals online, and now I'm working in a financial services company where we are, we help investors figure out where to put their money and if they should invest in a company or not. And so people inside our company called credit analysts, they say, you know, oh, you know, this company, their credit score is XYZ because they always pay their debts when they're supposed to. They have very strong financial situation. You know, we have confidence in their leadership. And so maybe they get a very strong score, and that will encourage investors to invest in them. Well, cybersecurity is becoming very important in terms of finances. If a company gets hit by a cyber attack, they might lose lots of money. So they might have been a very strong company before, but then after they have the cyber attack, they might have to spend so much money that now they don't have money to pay their debts that they owe. And so I work with the credit analyst to help them understand, you know, what is the financial impact from a cyber attack on the companies that they rate and that they analyze.
Wow. Okay.
And that's not a job that really has existed before. This is kind of a new job. So you know, the field is always evolving and developing, and that's why it's helpful to talk to people to learn what's possible. I didn't even know that this job existed before I took it a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Leroy, there is the question also, like, how many years will it take to be a good specialist of this field, or for example, with the university education or without? Or is there any way without entering the university and gaining the knowledge, enough knowledge to be an expert in this field?
Mm-hmm. So I didn't go to school for cybersecurity. I went to school for other things. And I know that there are a number of people in the cybersecurity field who barely graduated from high school and have very good careers in cybersecurity. And I wouldn't say that they are many, you know, very, very, very many, but they do exist. And if you again contrast that with something like medicine, you know, you don't have famous doctors who never went to college, right? So it's a good place to be able to develop skills. Even people who are self-taught or who didn't do very well in school can have a very successful cybersecurity career. There is somebody, his name is Marcus, and I forget his last name, but he became very popular in 2017 because there was a large cyber attack that he helped to stop. And so he became very well known, and you know, he has a pretty successful cybersecurity career. But you know, he barely graduated from high school. It just wasn't his thing. He was just obsessed with computers all the time, and he spent all his time working on computers. And he got into trouble because when he was very young, he was recruited by cyber criminals to help him do some bad things, write some bad computer programs. And then he moved on from that later in life. It still came back to bite him. He got stuck in the United States. He's from the UK, from England, but he got stuck here for a while the FBI was investigating him for some of the things he did before. But he, after he had left that behind, he became a very productive person working in cybersecurity. And again, no college, very bad high school student, but you know, really understands how computer works, and a very big contributor and very successful contributor to cybersecurity. So I would recommend, if you have the ability to go to college, college is more than just, college is more than just learning a specific skill. You meet people, you exchange ideas, you learn how to express yourself. Things like being able to write well are very important for cybersecurity, because you may understand something, but there are a lot of people who don't understand what you're working on, and you have to be able to communicate that to them. And so college can be very helpful for helping develop those skills. So if you have the ability to go to college, I strongly recommend it. But this is not a field where you can't have success if you haven't gone to college.
That's a great insight. And I really like one of the points that you made, the importance of knowing another foreign language. Could you collaborate on that a little more? Because Central Asian students, they usually talk 2 or 3 languages already.
Yeah. So as I said before, foreign languages can be useful for a number of different reasons. Sometimes there is important news or important discoveries that are made in other languages. The reporting might be from another language, and so you have an advantage because you can read that, and then it'll take time for somebody to translate that for somebody else. And then in particular, in the work that I was doing before, we were following cyber criminals online. And again, they speak different languages. Not everybody speaks English. And so if you really want to understand, what they're doing, it's important to be able to speak their language, and not only speak their language, but also understand their culture. They may reference things that you wouldn't know about unless you understand, unless you understand French culture, or if you understand Russian culture. So having that really deep understanding and knowledge will help you know, is this really a threat? There were a number of times when I was working where somebody might make a joke that, I'm going to attack blah, blah, blah company or something. And so that company would come rushing to us and say, they just said they're going to attack us. What should we do? But we would be able to say, oh no, they were just joking, because didn't you know that in 1980s, this show, existed on Russian television, and this is the joke that they made, and blah, blah, blah. And so having that cultural knowledge would help you tell the company, okay, this looks like you should be worried, but you actually don't need to be worried. And that can be very helpful when somebody can come to you as a knowledgeable person. And everybody's knowledgeable about something, right? So when people can come to you as a knowledgeable person about your background, your language, or a language that you studied in depth, that can be very helpful and useful for them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leroy, for sharing your insights. There's also another question from one of our subscribers, Zufar Beck. He says, what kind of computer programs are mostly used in cybersecurity, like tools or something like that?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of cybersecurity work that you're doing. If you're looking more on we call it the offensive side. So some people are we call penetration testers. So organizations will hire them to come in and test out the company's defenses and see if they can get in and steal something or change something, and give them some recommendations on how they can improve their security. And so there's a very popular computer operating system that maybe you've heard of called Kali Linux. And Kali Linux has a lot of different tools that cybersecurity professionals and hackers use when they want to simulate some sort of attack. It also has some tools that defend people who try to defend a network, or people who are trying to do some research and figure out how to stop cybersecurity attacks. It also has some tools for them. So one popular tool is called Wireshark, and that lets you look at the messages that are being sent on a network. So emails, internet, instant messages. It lets you look at the packets of information that your computer sends out, so you can figure out, what information is leaving your computer, or what information is leaving the network, and see if there's information that shouldn't be there, somebody stealing your information, or to be able to analyze that. Another tool is something called Metasploit, and Metasploit is a framework that brings together exploits and shell code and other components that can be used to compromise a computer system. So it just makes it a lot easier for you to take advantage of vulnerabilities that exist in a computer system, and be able to exploit that and take control of the computer system. So there are hundreds and hundreds of different tools that people will use, depending on their goal and purpose, and nobody knows how to use every single tool. And that's what I mean when I say, there's always something new to learn, there's always something new to do. They have things online called Capture the Flag tournaments, CTF. And when you work on these things, they give you a problem that you have to solve, that has something to do with cybersecurity. And sometimes they'll give you a hint that says, maybe you should read up about this tool, or maybe you should read up about this computer protocol. And that's also a really great way to learn, and increase your knowledge, and get some more exposure to specific tools that people might use.
Thank you very much for your answer. And there is another question, and it says, what kind of books should we read in the topic of cybersecurity, or is there any platform that we can use, or is there any free or non-free online courses that we can take?
Well, Nagina can give a good example of the IQ4 program, which she did, which was online.
Oh yeah, definitely. We will share more information about the IQ4. IQ4 is actually supervised by Mr.Leroy. It's a great studying program if anyone is interested, slight in cybersecurity but doesn't know where to start. I think IQ4 can be a great start to figure out if I really want to be in cybersecurity or not. And and it's also a lot of networking opportunity. You can network with the supervisors that are supervising you and your team members. And that was a good experience. We can share information about that right after the webinar. But I guess the question will be, we do have a lot of people interested in cybersecurity, but there are tons of information on the internet, and it can it's very easy to get lost. And it's hard to know where to start. Could you share some of your advice for students who don't know about cybersecurity, but they're interested now after this webinar, what they should do?
Yeah. So there are a number of different resources on how to get into cybersecurity, and I'll share. Somebody put together a very good set of advice that I saved. I don't know where it is exactly right now, but I'll send it to Nagina afterwards so she can share with you. And it gives some really good resources that you can go to for learning about cybersecurity. I can tell you what I did. It's not the same. It's not something that will work for everybody necessarily, but it's what I did. When I first wanted to learn about cybersecurity, my thinking for myself was, I want to learn about what hackers do. And hackers are people who make a computer do something that it wasn't supposed to do, or that they didn't intend it to do. And so I told myself, if that's what a hacker does, I want to know how computers work in the first place. So I took a computer science course taught by Harvard University online, and it's completely free. Anybody can take it. I think if you want to get some certificate from Harvard saying that you took this course, you can pay $90 or something like that, but anybody can take the whole course for free. You don't have to pay anything. And that was really helpful for understanding how computers work. There's a small part of it that talks about hacking and computer security, but most of it is programming. So I learned to program in C language, in Python, in PHP, which is a web language. And we also learned how computers work, how they save data, how they store data. We had different projects we had to work on. So we had to create games using programming. We had to write a website that would take in information and provide some analysis for the people using it. So it was just a really hands-on way to get exposed to working with computers and learning how they work. And it was a good foundation for moving on to cybersecurity and how to keep computers safe. So the name of that course is CS50, and maybe I'll put it in the chat. And CS stands for computer science. So computer science 50 at Harvard, and I recommend that. And there's a number of different, because cybersecurity is changing so quickly, there's a lot of good publications that you can check out. So there's a number of cybersecurity specific news online newspapers that are a good source of information. So you have there's a publication called Cyberscoop. There's trying to think of there's a podcast called Risky Business. I'll put some of these names for you. And these are really good sources of information. They go through the news, basically any cybersecurity news that's happening, and they explain to you what it is, what it means, why it's important. And that can be really good for a beginner as well to start reading these and see what cybersecurity people are talking about. And then I'd also say that Twitter is a really good way. A lot of cybersecurity people are on Twitter. So if you follow cybersecurity people on Twitter, that's a good way to see what they're talking about, learn from them. And a lot of them are very open to getting questions. So if you want to talk to somebody and do some networking, or you have a specific question about some cybersecurity thing that you're working on, anything that can help you, a lot of them are open to receiving a message from you, and we'll respond back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing the resources. I personally myself have taken the CS50 class as well. Like I've watched a couple of videos on YouTube. If I'm not mistaken, they also put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I watched like the CS50 courses on like in general programming. It was really fun. Like, and they have a like really huge audience for that course. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. There's also another question from one of the people here, Nafosa. She asks like how, if you can talk about like the best practices to protect oneself against identity theft.
To protect against identity theft. So usually the ways that cyber criminals are trying to get information from you are, number one, if you share that information publicly. So I know we live in the age of social media. People like to say a lot about themselves on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. So the more information that you put out there is the more information that somebody could use to conduct identity theft. So not saying that you shouldn't post, but make sure that when you post things, you don't post sensitive information. So sometimes people will post things sometimes they're not even aware. I know a couple of years ago, people were posting images of their flight, their ticket for airplanes. And they didn't know that on the ticket, they have some information that's encoded in like a barcode or something that has like your name, you know, some other sensitive information about you. And so people were they were taking the screenshot of the ticket, and they used that to find information about them or to change their ticket. Like one guy said that to make his sister mad or his cousin mad, he saw that she had put this ticket online, and so he went to the airline's website and changed her ticket so that she couldn't take her flight. So so just be very careful about the things that you post on social media. That's one way, you know, that's I guess the easiest way to cut down on identity theft. And then the other thing is cyber criminals like to steal information from people through phishing. And for those people who aren't familiar with phishing, you know, somebody will send you a message, typically through email, and they'll want you to provide some credentials. So they'll make you think that you're signing into Google, or they'll make you think that you're signing into Microsoft, but you're actually giving them your sensitive information. So being very careful what you click on when you open emails, you know, check make sure it's from the person that you think it's from, and, you know, not giving out information to people who shouldn't have it is a really good way to cut down on identity theft too.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that as well. And it is really, those are really good points, which are like one of the top problems these days. Like people just like to share different things from their life without realizing that they might be actually a target for different like cyber crimes. So there's another question related to cybersecurity from one of our audience here, and he asks, what like you mentioned at the beginning, like cybersecurity is a huge field, and there are like different directions in that field. And what are the specific directions in cybersecurity are the most demanding and will be the most demanding in the future?
What will be the most demanding? So I'm not 100% sure, but I would say there are certain job functions where let's say if you're helping to run a critical function for an organization, that can be very demanding on your time, because basically at any point, you know, if whatever you're helping to secure is under attack or is having some sort of incident, you know, you might be home sleeping and they'll call you up and say, you got to get here right away, because, you know, it's that important to keep it safe. So it really depends on what you're working on. When I worked at Flashpoint, for example, we were helping lots and lots of different companies to secure what they're working on. We were helping a lot of companies keep themselves safe. And so that meant that we were on almost all the time. It was a very demanding schedule. You know, basically I'd wake up and I'd check my messages to see if anything happened. And then people would be sending messages back and forth, even at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., because, you know, they were working on it, they were doing research, they were trying to help a client figure out a problem and solve a problem. So if you're working in, that's a field called threat intelligence. If you're working on threat intelligence, you know, there's always a bad guy awake somewhere. So, you know, you could have a very demanding schedule trying to keep up with that and make sure that you are stopping attacks that can happen at any time. The work that I'm doing now is more research-based. It's working more or less on a 9 to 5 schedule. And so it's less demanding in the sense of there's not usually emergencies that I have to run to put out. There are some, but not as much. But it's more demanding intellectually because we're coming up with new concepts and new ideas between cybersecurity and financial services. And these are things that people haven't really written about before. And so it's a lot of intellectual work, but not so much, tactical work, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that answers the question about which is the most demanding. There are also certain fields that have more requirements in terms of technical understanding. So I mentioned people who dig into malware to figure out what it's doing. A lot of the work that goes into getting you there, you have to understand how malware works. You have to spend a lot of time researching malware and playing with it and seeing what it does. You have to understand what we call assembly language, which is the very low level guts of how a computer communicates. And it's not very intuitive. It takes a little while to understand exactly what that, how to interpret that language. And so you have to spend a lot of time studying this. So that's demanding in terms of preparation. So every field has its, or every subcomponent of cybersecurity has its own parts that might be demanding or a little bit less demanding, depending on what people are interested in.
Thank you very much for your answer. There is another question. From your perspective, what is the most essential challenges that's arising right now or in the coming 5 years?
This is difficult because, especially 5 years. I mean, even a month in cybersecurity, there can be so many things that happen that you just would never have expected. So in terms of what kinds of things to look towards or be interested about or concerned about, I think are some of the same things that everybody who's interested in technology is looking at. So things like 5G, technology for communications, things like quantum computing, development in artificial intelligence. These are things that will change our relationship with computers and our relationship with technology. So, I mean, with 5G, they're saying that this could be helpful for things like what's the word? Automated driving or self-driving cars. And, when you have all these different devices talking to each other, that has its own cybersecurity implications, which can be, very concerning if it's not done in a safe way. With quantum computing, there are concerns that they'll be able to break cryptology or cryptography, which means that the secret information that we send back and forth that helps keep your credit card information safe when you buy something online, they might be able to break that. And people are working on ways to make sure that doesn't happen. With AI, people are saying that this could accelerate cyber attacks, that people could train a computer algorithm to be more effective in conducting a cyber attack. So, there's lots of things in motion, even right now, that cybersecurity professionals are keeping an eye on to see how they develop over time. But 5 years from now, who knows? The world will be a very different place, especially in terms of technology, which moves very quickly.
Yeah, it's really interesting to ask questions about the future because the things are getting really changed like in a really short amount of time. I have read an article last month and it was really interesting, and it's really interesting to know your opinion, your position. So there is a high interest in the Neuralink right now. So the people are saying, what if the brain will be hacked in the future because of that technology? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think humans are really interesting because we we try new and different things. That's one of the traits about humans. And sometimes we're not aware of what the consequences could be. So we know that computer systems are not, computer systems often have vulnerabilities in them. And these are weaknesses that can be exploited to take over that system or to change it or damage it. And so, you know, if you're putting something that we know has vulnerabilities and you're mixing it with human biology and putting it into our brains, you know, there are some potential worries there. But in any decision or any advance that you make, there's always the advantages and the disadvantages. And so everybody will have to decide for themselves at some point, you know, if this happens, is it a better, is it more advantageous for me to have a computer chip in my brain, or do the dangers outweigh the advantages? And that'll probably depend on what we call the first movers or the first adopters. So there's always people who do something before everybody else does. They want to try it out first. And I'm not usually one of those people. I usually say, let's let other people try it first. And then if it works for them, then maybe I'll do it. But it will be, you know, at some point, maybe if you want to be competitive in the future, like, for example, at one point, you know, nobody had cell phones, you know, and I remember when I first saw somebody writing email on his cell phone, I thought, you know, why does he think he's so important that he can't wait until he gets back to his house to write an email? Why does he think he needs to write an email when he's walking around outside? And now all of us do that, right? So technology changes, and, you know, a lot of people would not be able to keep up with their jobs if they didn't have access to email and messages all the time. And so maybe at some point, you know, you'll decide, if I don't have a chip in my head, I'm not, you know, keeping up with everybody else. So now I have to do it. That'll be something that'll be interesting to potentially see.
Yeah, it's really interesting to know about it. There is one more last question. Do you think the creation of AI and its development will help the countries to strengthen their national cybersecurity? Can you give your thoughts on national cybersecurity challenges?
Can you repeat the question? Do I think that AI will
strengthen the security, national security of the country? Will it help to the country?
Okay. You know, it's hard to say. I think that any country who has the financial ability to look into these new technologies like AI, like quantum computing, they're all sort of racing against each other. And in, you know, the first places are typically China, the United States, and European Union or European Union countries are racing on trying to develop this technology because, you know, if whoever is able to make the most advances and be the best in these new fields could have some advantage over other countries. And then you also don't want to be left behind. So you want to try and keep up with everybody else, because if they're able to control a new type of technology, that can put you at a disadvantage from a national security standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint. You know, if one country has a special technology and everybody else has to go to them and pay them to use the technology, that's an economic cost as well. So, and, you know, countries will continue to compete against each other. And to a certain extent, competition is good because it means that people try to be better and better and better. And, you know, but this will also have consequences in terms of, you know, certain societies will have very advanced technology, while other societies might not have access to it. And so that might have other consequences, like widening the wealth gap between countries, and making certain areas even poorer and poorer and certain areas even richer and richer. And these are also big questions that governments have to work together to help solve.
Thank you very much for all of your insight. I think it's time to wrap up. I told you it will last until 10 a.m. and I would like to be respectful of your time. If you guys don't have any last questions, thank you so much, Mr. Leroy. It was very helpful, and I hope our participants will also benefit from all of your insights. We will upload this video to YouTube so that wider audience will also be able to watch it. Thank you so much again.
No problem. And if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask and you want to, and you'd like to hear what I think about it, just send me a message on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you and be of any help I can be.
That's perfect. I will share your LinkedIn if you don't mind. Our main channel is located in Telegram. So a lot of the Central Asia, Telegram is very widely used by people in Central Asia. That's why, if you don't mind, I will share your LinkedIn to our Telegram channel, and also about the internship with IQ4 Virtual Internship Challenge.
Awesome. And I'll also send to you, I was supposed to send to you something, I'm blanking now.
The steps of starting career in cybersecurity?
Exactly, yes, I'll send that to you.
Sure, thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great day, everybody.
Have a good day, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.